So Vistas for the new year. So this is like just exploiting the possibilities of that there is this year change, which one has to acknowledge. So why not also use it in this manner of taking a possibility to look ahead at topics that we just discussed and look at the landscape, so to speak. And I have like something to throw on the table. I'll try to keep it short because we should collectively put things on the table, or the vista, the landscape rather. Maybe it's a better metaphor now, given that we started with it. But I'll start with this as a kind of opening possibility. So, well, some time ago, we touched upon a certain approach, I would say, which was this sort of, let's say, sense of kind of light proposals that is like not, say, 20-page papers or longer describing something in an exhaustive detail, but rather something that is kind of composed in the manner of you probably haven't thought about this to the world itself. And as a possibility, and this is also my reflection on this sort of kind of how could XORG have more visible identity, and what kind of possibilities it could have on that. Like, first of all, vision this for a landscape. So there could be, of course, something like a simple web page presence, but the key thing here and there would be this sort of proposal, like, for example, if we take the Oxel itself as a proposal, as like starting from like almost like the mindset, then having some approaches of how to go forward with that kind of thinking, and then that opening a kind of thinking space, play space, which we can interface other people. But if Oxel is one possibility, I would also raise, just as to throw possibilities on the table, there is the possibility of the card and the kind of approach to card as more almost like a general unit of meaning or playful meaning, or general unit of meaning and playful operation, and that as kind of a form to use and perhaps to play with, could be possibly given in a rather short form. Beyond that, there is also the gene, which is the playable or gameable meaning. And there is overlap between this. There's overlap between, or at least Venn diagram overlap between Oxel and card and gene. But I don't think that overlap is a problem because they are more perspective. But why I think the gene might be an interesting thing is, like, I think it fits to the sort of simple proposal. I think it might also have potential traction. Just to, I'll do a quick share screen. If we remember, let's try like sharing. Like, I'll share the whole screen. So if you remember these, but with the key idea that, like, I would start the proposal in the case of the gene from the key idea that like how meme has this rather interesting techniques of distribution, in a way breeding itself, expanding in that manner. Its relation with its receiver, viewer, whatever, are actually rather traditional, that they have this sort of sense of viewing, that it comes from the viewer observer paradigm, how it works. And like you look at it and then you like it or don't like it, which is the most traditional thing in itself. And like, which has always annoyed me. Like I find memes to be like underneath rather traditional, like in this manner. So then the idea of a gene being that it's not a thing that is ready, but rather something that you compose from the pieces that it gives. So Jim having this, let's say the expansion, distribution, nature of a meme, but expanding in a sense of being nothing, in a sense, a game, but like almost like a starting point of play, that play can start from it. Like these ideas have this, that it's almost like a potential scene, and every text in itself, rather than saying what this is in a kind of finger pointing manner, that here is president whatever, it's more actually something is generated from here, and then that opens up to this sort of directions, like, okay, it's actually generated, what are the things doing? Like I think the earlier one had like more experiments or explorations of different forms, like then you can form this categories like entities, which then are fed pieces that once again more make them more generative. But then you can have like queries, like the ones in the bottom left, which are once again opening generation. And then you can have like actions, which are the exclamation points on the bottom right. But these were like really early explorations of how to kind of push this more from a generative angle, and how to have like typology or forms of expression towards that. So, but yeah, that's, I talked long enough about that, but in a way, like one can imagine that as a short proposal, like in a way, even having qualities of a manifesto, but not being manifesto like fire and brimstone, but more manifest, more like a proposal in terms of how to use it and how to play with it. And then, but beyond those, there is also potentially the setting and the offer. And the one thing still to mention is also like underneath OXO, I can see unraveling many of the things that we have talked about or processed earlier, from this sort of dividing of organizational element into building blocks like the role and the scene and the ops or operation, are potentially something that can be introduced in the OXO itself. One final point, like in terms of approaching this, I would just put like two challenges for them. Like one is like how to play to proposal, and how the proposal itself can play. And in a way, like how to develop the proposal in a through play, that it's exploring itself further, and then how when the proposal is made, it can it's not just, of course, it can define things, but it's more defining things that are then playable pieces. And yeah, so that's a one thing I wanted to place on the landscape as a possibility to think as a kind of light pieces of projections in the world that XORG could do. I have others, but I'm talked long enough, so I'll pause at this point.
I love the idea of generating proposals through play, and games sound like the best way to do it, or a very fun one at least. So yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, also having the simple web page, as you said at the beginning, I think it's really good.
Oh yes, yeah, fundamental.
Yeah, there is also like I said, there is Venn diagramic nature to this, but that is not like, for me it's like actually in a way even a good thing to make an example of it. Gems open an interesting perspective towards the setting and the organization, in the sense that, okay, what if I play with this gene, what if I make 5 of them? Or what if I get 5 of them? How do I play with them? And that's already kind of like starting a question of how to organize them together. But then it's a very particular way of looking at organization and setting in itself. So it can open up new perspectives towards that. So that's so they kind of like, I think it's actually good to almost invite and entertain this overlapping, how genes reach to other things. What about Jakub? What's your sense of that kind of direction?
Yeah, I also resonate and it look into this kind of identity question, like the web page, something like that, and also from those, I'm still kind of attracted to the offer because it resonates with me since the Holocene hackathon, from the discussions with GM and others, and like, but I'm open to any way forward.
Yeah, I think like for all of them, like there is a good question of this, like how to keep it light. I'm definitely sharing Jakub's interest in the offer. Like that's why it was on the list. Also, like, and there might be others, not an exhaustive list, but just drawing this. But one of the reasons I brought back the gene was that I can see the lightness of kind of production of it. But I think like one could take it as a challenge of how to find it for the offer as well. But I do think it's a kind of like having such things is maybe an interesting way to then utilizing those things when they exist. Like in a way, like to use the concept of an offer here, they are offers to the world, but they are also offers that don't just have to sit on the website. The website is in itself useful, but also supporting material. It's like it can provide engagement points, which then leads to engagements with other people, whether it's a session on voxels, whatever, any of these cases. But also like how they present themselves might open up this sort of different ways of participation for people. To take an example, that is the Oxel is like if we take, like, I think Oxel can form what's it called, like umbrella towards this many of the things that we have processed quite in an extensive manner, like the role and functioning of the scene and how we can overlay operations on the scene and turn an object into an operation, and it has an organizational role. All of the stuff that from the past of XORG. But then, like, one can think of for that as like, okay, like, here's the proposal, and here is a case of an voxel to play, offered for people, which essentially could be practically like the scene-like thing. But the voxel as an umbrella concept allows for this sort of like organization between the scene-like things, and like the scene being like it has some pre-configured roles, and it has some operations that set it, things that we have done, and actually looking at them over time in those playful forms, whether they were like playing this organization as a dungeon or some experiments with the cards, actually have a lot of structural sense and robustness. So offering them to people as something to play might be a kind of like a possible different way of interacting or engaging with XORG. Now I probably talk too much because I
No, not at all. That's great. We should totally think of the website as a space where offers can be made, and yeah, conceptualize it as a space of play that people can utilize to engage with XORG in different ways. I don't know, there's so much potential on it, right?
And even like there is a possibility to kind of embrace the different proposals and their overlap. So like in a way, like what I was just telling about Oxel, if there is a proposal for a gene, then you can point out how the gene in itself is organizing people. Like it's saying people like which things to generate, etc. So it's kind of doing the same thing. It has this sort of similar game board quality, but in a different sense. But then pointing out those overlaps in itself like brings this sort of like multi-perspective way of looking at the same things, which is healthy. I think there should be like this sort of multi-perspective possibility.
And I kind of like, I guess what comes to my mind is that if we at some point were like looking at the possibilities of the website or the offers or like how it could be played, then for me it kind of offers this I have to say cognitive scaffolding, that it's not just happening in our minds, but it can be delegated onto the visual space, which can make it easier to to play with it at some points perhaps.
Yeah, I agree. I strongly agree. I like your term cognitive scaffolding. And we have another Mexico surprise, or Pablo wasn't a surprise. But yeah, like the cognitive scaffolding is this. I have the sense that if we have like forms, those forms will breed other forms. Like in a way, like having expressions and structure strengthens the possibility of new expressions and structure. Welcome to the stream. Well, we all know that these are Mexican bricks. You cannot fake them. But we welcome you and the Mexican brick background.
Thank you. Good morning. I literally just overslept. And I'm sorry. And it's great to see you all, by the way.
Likewise. like that goes for all of you. Like, great to see you, but I didn't say great to see you, so I'll say for anyone. So you're looking at, just to bring you up to speed a bit, like we just went through an idea which we maybe we could together like make in a summary form of what it is. But what you're looking at on the screen is a G, which is a gameable, playable meaning, which is an earlier XORG seed idea, projection, emergence, proposal, which is a meme where you're not a viewer or a spectator like you are in traditional memes, but it's rather like almost requires playing with it to actually make it meaningful. So, but that's maybe something that can be painted further as we go. But how would you all summarize where we are to bring Eva up to speed?
We are mapping the potential space of XORG future. You're supposed to continue the summary, someone.
And it won't be me, so somebody has to.
We talked about a potential web page where offers can be made. And I don't remember what Jakub said. It was quite brilliant. Scaffolding. Damn, I don't remember.
It was this pseudo concept, but perhaps useful, like cognitive scaffolding, that taking the concepts that we're using and giving it a bit of a more material form and like playing with it visually or in more kind of implementing them in the space of the website. So I call it cognitive scaffolding, but kind of offloading some of the processing that we are doing in our minds while we're playing also onto the board game, or like in this in this case, the web page.
I guess it's now my move, unless I completely edit out. I should do them both. It would be fair. So, in the background there was this idea of like proposals, kind of like seeds, that could be kind of thrown out in the world in a very light manner, not 20-page papers, but in like how some of these structures that we have, like this gene, but also cards and oxels and offers, also the setting could be made in a manner that here's a thing for you, like a small seed for you to grow, whoever you are. And that being kind of like a projection of XORG identity. I always think that like identity is actually a freeing concept once you kind of remove it from yourself, and organizations are an interesting way to think about that, or really enable that. It's like you are creating this identity, which has some persistence and metabolism, like nature itself. And so, like if we would place the XORG so that others could see it in other ways than what are the current ones, what would be such a way? And a small thing, making this sort of proposals that are small but surprisingly large. And their largeness comes from the fact that they play themselves to grow. As was something of a background color in this proposals that XORG could give to the world that we were thinking. my move was too long, but it was what it was.
Should we talk about some of those exciting prospects? I would be, of course, super interested in talking about identity and a website. Like, yeah, that's stuff that really makes me excited. So we could focus on that. It's just a proposal.
Yeah, we already had some conversation about the domain in our chat, some that got into some funny sort of as well propositions, but I feel like we already did a bit of talking on that, so maybe it's just a case of actioning, of course, well, agreeing, but yeah.
I think we like do say.
No, that between Martin and me, we have capacity to build something cool. So that's great.
And in terms of like such a thing, like such a framework in a way, like I think what could inform that framework is the sort of proposals themselves. Like in a way, whatever form the proposals come to is probably the kind of the major color or major figure of the website itself. So the one way to think about this sort of presence of identity that such a thing would be to like think what kind of form this kind of proposals could take.
When you talk about these proposals, are you imagining them as internal proposals that create the website, or as the website as a place that gathers proposals externally?
What do you mean by internal and external?
Like it's our XORGian proposals towards creating the website?
I mean, could be. I didn't I didn't have a strong choice in that division in itself. Like I was mostly having images. Like if I take the gene, because it's a visual one, it's easy to think about. Like I'm not saying it goes this way, but think about it, just to brainstorm as a move, one possibility how it could happen. It's like it's good to set this sort of almost like a filter how you look at these things first. Like I think many of these things kind of maybe they don't require but benefit from that. So think of that like you have this sort of description of like reminding of the meme and dividing two things out of it. Like first of all, this sort of structure that is kind of this sort of branching in a way, evolving, forming new forms which are then copied, etc. And that the kind of certain fertility in that. But then you take another side. You like maybe that's a pause, and then you come to another definition, which is, but the form of life when they engage is then the spectator, the person sitting on the front of the computer looking at a meme and then saying, I like this or I don't like it, which is super traditional. We'll use that word, but like underlining that there is something both kind of rather different or novel about the meme side, and then there's something that is actually super traditional, which I now like wouldn't write this, but which annoys me to hell. I find them like memes are boomer stuff. But yeah, so you have these two things. But then okay, so if you define those two, then you come to this sort of maybe a question, like opening like a doorway to a question, like a third move to a person, which is like how could the second part, this traditional spectatorship, be changed? And then you maybe open up this sort of like maybe one example gene, and then you like outline certain areas. Like, what if you come to not to a finalized meal, but ingredients, and then you have to generate these things from it. Like it's something that rather than asking you to evaluate whether you like the picture or sense of media, it's more like, oh, I'm supposed to generate from here, and then like you unlike like how if you have questions there, like in this one, how they kind of create their own projections. If you're defining things, you're just setting this sort of small little seeds from where to grow, but you're supposed to get elsewhere than the image itself, and kind of making that practical. And then maybe from there, you get to like a palette of different approaches, which also includes how they play. There were other more simpler examples. Let me find, I think you're still seeing the screen, but like I actually like that from Gene, but there was this, which I made first as a kind of proof of concept, which was a simple change in a meme, just this one alteration, which was like you have a picture and then you have these terms on the side, but the terms are not connected to anything. So it's very much like one step from a traditional meme. Traditional meme, some of these terms would be over these figures, and then it would be a meme. Everybody would say, oh, whatever, these were made for crypto people. So you have a lot of intentionally trying to be funny to be meme-like, kind of like, okay, the dinosaur figure is elder capitalist, and then the slime on the boot is fiat currencies. How does the image change? Just to kind of illustrate this, but it plays differently. And yet the other part of the example is like keeping the same list but changing the picture already changes the behavior of that meme. But it underlines this idea of like, actually I have to make it. Like it's a building. But it like that maybe concretizes the idea, but then once you get the idea too much. Okay, I should go here. Once you get the idea, then there's a much more expansive possibility is like because they are generating like good, like they can grow into like scene-like things. Like this was still a bit like awkwardly trying to be funny, but then doing different things, like saying the dark squeaks areas. Is that how you say it? Is now okay, but what happens if the dark squeaks areas? And then like butterflies have pissed all this water. Oh yeah, and the duck squeaks areas, but the singer is the tenor fish, which then would be this. And then there are carrot zombies. Singing makes them feel alive, and they can float on water, but they cannot swim. And then, like, as a question from Holy Altar for carrot zombies. There's a kind of big energy, almost. Like, but then the idea is like what comes out of this is probably then thoughts like, oh, okay, like then like you generate from this like something else than just what the ingredients are, which then opens up this possibility of you're kind of creating a world by entering it through the one porthole of the gene. But then what is that world, and how you can do what you can do with that, and how then the genes start to behave like cards, which are portholes to the world, and then the world, you know, and it actually has a lot of expansive expression range, which is different from, say, normal text or something. okay, I'm going too far, but like this pathway of like couple of mindsets, like the breeding of the memes, the traditionality of the spectatorship, flipping the spectatorship into playfulness. Here's an example how, here's an example how, here's some tools that enable this. And that's as far as I got.
Sounds great. I also really like the idea of like a long asynchronous game that happens through the
Yeah.
games, kind of infinite in a way as well. And I guess memes are already, you can already just like create a variation, but most people just engage with them passively.
Mhm.
So it is about flipping, as you said, the spectatorship into activity through an invitation to play, right? So that's exciting from XORG perspective.
Yeah, definitely. You say.
Now this unfolding quality, which can take turns. It's interesting that it's more alive than, you know, just memes or there's, yeah. I think this quality of unfolding, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and there is like just even to like to strongly agree and then kind of concretize that, like in a way like what Pablo you described and Linda you also added to it is like almost like then like for the presentation it's kind of like a horizon and you have these pieces, then you can paint this horizon like what can happen with it, and then you concretize that. It's like maybe it's not this example, but I'll just use it because it's here. It's like if somebody then picks up an image which has, say, carrots, and then makes another gene which is around carrot zombies, which comes partly from how they played with it, then that expands. It's another portal to the same world, or where this gene and that gene can interact and both can grow. So then you start to open up that you have this sort of moves that are the genes themselves, and of course the moves that are playing through the genes. Like for example, even if I add to the carrot zombies that they are things that I mean we think of them as zombies, but it's the natural growth path. It's this sort of like that they whenever they're singing, they start to move in masses and make weird groaning sound. And then somebody has a picture of carrots on the floor of a forest, and it's a migration pattern of carrot zombies, but then puts like gene-like things on it, which it becomes a new generator. And you can start to imagine it actually starts quite quickly to have the same expansive power as any like role-playing game, but it plays differently. It's not like here's the whole role-playing game, but it's rather a completely distributed, decentralized way of approaching similar things in this sort of cultural, anybody can do them in any media kind of manner.
What I really like is the narrative that starts unfolding and unfolding, and sometimes it's more carrot zombies. And at the same time, like it doesn't have to, like it has jumps on that train, but then or also not. And like it's just cool. It's like the rolling of
Eva, we're getting you in generated fragments, but very much fragmented. Could you try like turning off the camera? Maybe that helps.
I just realized that it wasn't ideal. A bit better.
Yeah, it sounded better, and we got like the kind of like generation of narrative that can, like in a way, branch that from any point, but and that's much. So some of the points got through, but some of them probably were missed. Could you try to go through some of the points again? That probably would help. You can also try the voice, but I mean, your choice.
I tried to realize. I think it's not. I think you are not able to hear.
It's a bit choppy, but not terrible.
Yeah, it's better. There is an I'll have to. There's a attempted hijack, but I'll have to take it off. So I'll just deal with the wrong session. Hello, Jorge.
Hey, Pecco. Didn't know you guys had a meeting today. I was going to meet with Axel. Hey,
No, it's
how are you?
okay. Actually good, although it's this New Year's funk, like which is good, like having some mental break and trying to come out of the funk in itself. But how are you?
Ah, good. Happy New Year, guys. I don't want to interrupt. Are
No,
you
no,
guys in the
yeah,
middle of
it's
something?
okay. Like if you provided a good interlude, but I think actually realized also, and he'll probably offer another channel, like, so we'll still hear a bit. So
All right. I'll send him as a Google Meet link. So
yeah,
I'll let you guys just keep going.
all
Good
right.
to see you. See
Yeah,
you.
To
See
see
you.
you.
Ciao,
See you
ciao.
later. Bye.
I love the spatial quality of these Zoom rooms. It's just
Yeah.
incredible.
Mm. Yes. Yes, this could also be some branching quality be part of the website. But I also think like that it could like instigate people, lure people to push them elsewhere. Because it's also like these could be possibilities that, you know, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, whatever, like I could just continue the list, like they could appear there and like they do benefit from having anchor points like the website, which allow people like understand what this is, but they also do benefit from the sort of scatterers, like seeds flying in the air and landing on Twitter and people asking, what is this? And then somebody just playfully saying it's a G. And then, but what is that? And it's like both are beneficial. But I really think there is something like touching upon all of this, including Eva's point, like there's something rather fertile in this idea of like this kind of play, which has this depth like a role-playing game, but doesn't have the heaviness. Like it doesn't have like necessarily a permanent world. Like it's happening like that two people had went deep with the tenor fish or carrot zombies or whatever, or screen, or with the dream summon giants, which have this idea that they come from like 5 drunk cats merge into giants, and then giants dream about a city, and then the city emerges from the whatever the giants are dreaming, and that's a city. And some people start to develop that city, and that goes somewhere or doesn't. Ends up in somebody else's play or doesn't. Like that kind of strength and likeness is a really interesting fertile combination.
I'm thinking what could be some minimal infrastructure to get a game going. Maybe a Telegram channel could be an option for that.
Yes, I
How
think
about 2 Pecos are in now?
it's actually another same account. Weird. I think it's actually they're looking for the meeting. So
I would love 2 Pecos available.
this is a quality I haven't been able to manage to do, I think. Hello, Axeli, I think.
There, hey,
Hello.
Are you in Lapland?
no, I was skiing and I'm warming up the sauna here in the by
Oh,
the lake.
okay. It looked like rustic Lapland, so I was trying to make a guess.
It's almost. Hey, no worries.
Yeah,
Go on.
yeah. Jorge was here earlier, and he's saying he's sending you a Google Meet.
Good.
And sorry,
Okay,
yeah,
I'm gonna be. No
yeah.
worries.
Sorry for missing Wednesday. I had like hell with the internet, but let's catch up on Zoom.
Yeah. No, so let's talk. I'll phone you tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Yeah. Let's do that. Bye.
Hey, Pablo. Jakub,
Yeah.
ciao.
Hey.
Yeah.
The spatial quality continues.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So that's fertile.
Yeah.
Play.
Telegram channel could be an interesting option. Just maybe there's options to, maybe you can avoid sharing text. That would be incredible if it's only like images, edited images, and the whole channel is just images. I will check if that's possible.
I mean, possibly you could also, like, I think for the channels, you can always set soft rules. Like, you don't have to put it in, like, that it's like the program doesn't have to take care of it. The players can take care of it. Like, so that could be a possibility. Like either or, both work. But like, it would be easy to set up a channel and set like a pinned message of rules, which still would have text, like, or an image actually, which had the rules. And then if somebody falters on the rules, like that can be dealt with. It's not going to break the channel. Because like that would be like a quick and dirty, and then like later you can think like more enforced if one wants to, but like it's pragmatically workable in that manner already. Because I have this hunch, I'm talking too much, but I'll say just this thing. I have this hunch, and I'm fairly good usually on my like playful structure hunches. I have this hunch that this form has like a particularly good breeding ground of actually starting to come up with different ways to express the play. That like coming up with it, I kind of mapped that operative space in a quick, like, okay, this makes sense, that you have this way of almost like creating an entity or an object. Like that's why it reads entity on the Dream Summon chance, to remind of the idea that it could read an object, it could read ambience, really could read anything, but like the sort of possibility of people kind of putting a form around a thing and then generating into the form, and then having this sort of like intentionally, like this bullet point form has this possibility that they're intentionally generative, like dream summon giants, dream blue fog and their homes into existence. But what does it mean? Like it's like saying something, but it's saying too little. You have to like add the details, which is generated. But then you have this sort of question, like sites within the city, which is once again like different kind of generative. And then you have this sort of, I don't have a good name for it because actionable sounds very boring, but like this sort of like grow the city as a patchwork, which is not an order, but like a proposal in itself. But these are very rudimentary things. There's much more to express in this space, which I don't have yet, but I could think that could be grown just by playing with it. And there are also play styles, like to take from earlier XORG stuff, the move of the shift, which was this idea that like people often have this sort of tendency when they make moves that they want to give something complete. So the shift was this idea that you can kind of give the liberty of not being complete. Like, okay, I'll make an example. Okay, there is the singer is the tenorfish. We don't know anything else about the tenorfish, but I could say the tenorfish have different vibrations in their voice, and some of them create small tremblings in the landscape and also patterns in the water. And that's where I stop. Like, it's a fragment. But it's easier to create something fragmentary. But the fragmentary can then be another one's seed. So that's the strength of it. It becomes similar to, going the wrong direction, comes to similar seed-like quality as the kind of small little bullet points in the giant. And also they don't necessarily enforce themselves, but become this sort of possibility of expanding the imaginary landscape or world space, meaning space for others.
Super cool. Really exciting. I also feel like I need to go.
Oh yes, you both had the time period. I wanted to ask Jakub, since you're you might be suffering from internet or not, but what's your, I know that this was, I picked the gene because I had like the mental image of how you could tell the story, but it's not to pick it as the case, but more that it was nicely concretizing. But what's your impressions of all of this?
Yeah, I guess I'm trying or to see, like, for example, if I were to take it now, the gene, so like trying to see in my mind how I would introduce or communicate or play it with the friends, or to kind of like this is more process intriguing and communicating and playing with it around, because it made a bit more dense of playing with those concepts, so they are staying alive in my mind. And one way is to run board here in the physical city, Yeah.
You
So
were
this
also,
is what I'm.
yeah, you were also cutting off a bit, but I think I got your point, and I think you have a good point, which kind of leads me to add one thing to this sort of proposal, which is a how to, roughly speaking. Like once you kind of told the story, then you give this sort of easy how to, for example, how to make one, which is, I think, a key part of the play. And for this case, like there's many ways to do it. Like you can do like a super beginner stuff, which is like almost like give people even ready-made elements. And like you can compose this, but then at the same time you tell that these elements have like different play styles, operations, like different moves, like you could add queries, and then they move this way, and if you add this sort of bullet points, they move this way, and so combining this sort of like here's like elements you could add to other images, like, and it's actually a sensible way, like take this summoner giants. I mean, people can come up with better ideas than what I kind of quickly threw out back in the day when this was introduced. But like, and you just find another image and maybe even put the same text, it's already a different form of play. But then it opens up, like, what if you edit some of the things into text? You don't write it from scratch, but you change, you modify it, or you write it from scratch. So there is this sort of step-by-step progression also possible. Not that you have to follow that, but there is a way to open that, like how do you play it? And I do think, like from your point, Jacob, like giving this how to is I think an important emphasis, or how to play it.
Sounds good. Jakub might be frozen though.
In the real world, maybe not.
Yeah,
Hopefully
I
not.
can hear you. I can hear you well and see you. Might be the outgoing from.
Maybe I'll stop sharing. It might lower the bandwidth a bit. But yes, but like to summarize from this, because I know Pablo and Linda, you have to go. Like I do think like these kind of proposals can have this challenge, as said in the beginning. It's like play to proposal, and then the proposal in itself is a form of play. To put this, which is part of the identity, to turn things into playfulness, but also like that. I think it's a quality that can benefit these kind of things. And I do think like the others, like I can actually see how to do this with Oxel, but the gym is actually seems surprisingly easy, even almost like it's just like it's there, it can be done, and then if it's down to that point, then it kind of gets some momentum. It wasn't cognitive frameworks. What was the cognitive scaffolding? Was Jakob's word. It becomes cognitive scaffolding in itself, which then develops new forms of play and can open up. And then if you like run a session of it for people, that becomes further development in itself. Like it develops material, which then deepens the palette range of its functioning and the options for play.
Great. I will have to go, but I'm gonna copy my notes into the Telegram channel. And I also shared some speculative board games that could serve us for some game making.
Nice.
Yes. One more additional perspective to just quickly underline. As this proposal, you could say that the proposal is a game, maybe in quotation marks, because it is like you can play the whole game as a like this sort of arching game, but at the same time it's a kind of cultural proposal. Like it's an overarching concept that could exist just like the meme and could spread in a similar manner, and that introduces this interesting crux point or a bridging point where it's actually kind of showing how a cultural thing could exist in a complete in a game paradigm, like in the guise of a game itself. Of course, it's a game of games that every time people play, they're kind of games themselves, like it's a fractal game. But then that becomes a form of proposal, like that then people can that makes a sense of the XORG itself. Like if XORG is able to propose a fractalic structure of a game into a culture, it's also telling about XORG.
Amazing. Looking forward to spin down this XORGian fractal structure.
Yes.
with you all.
Yes. All right.
Nice.
So yeah, let's visit this. I had it other, I'll just put it in a pin, like that we should maybe speculate also like the developments from the couple of earlier weeks, like the sort of organizational design, and it's a thing to visit. Because but I do think this fits or can support those kind of things as well. But for like actually getting XORG as present, which then can feed XORG itself, not just by people, but also like this sort of communication point. These kind of directions might be interesting to give some effort in the coming year, and really aiming for this sort of quick expression, because I think the kind of things that could come out of that in terms of side effects or consequences are rather interesting.
I like side effects. Ooh, thank you, Pekko. Nice to see you all in this new year.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. I will meet Eva for the goodbyes since she's still joining. And then we can say goodbye. She can come into the goodbye.
Ciao.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Hello, Eva. People are saying goodbyes. Do you have?
Oh God.
You can pick up the priest of last words, which is a gene element. So how would you play priest of last words for this session? You don't have to be a priest. You can change that.
I don't think you hear me.
We can hear.
Gonna run off. Ciao, guys.
All right.
Yeah.
See you.
Yeah.
We'll send you pictures later when we and Eva meet. Maybe we can find some XORGian stuff to send pictures of.
Yeah, actually, this might be an interesting frame for snapping cell phone pictures of weird flowers and trash on the street. And
we'll make sure to keep my eyes open.
And if you make such a move and send it, I will promise to make a move to add to them.
Exciting. Then yeah, it's on.
Like playing.
We'll do it.
Yeah, I'll make a move of adding something to the image, which kind of in a gene-like fashion.
Nice. Then see you soon. Goodbye.
See you soon. And
Bye-bye. See you.
I think I'll stop the recording first. I will move in order.
Mhm.